If during the program you need to talk to a JCFS staff person, our colleague Carol is on the program and is open and willing and ready to talk to anyone. So you can open up the chat and look for Carol, and you will be able to message her. And now that all of that boring housekeeping thing is done, I'd like to welcome my colleague, Rabbi Joe Zabrowski.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to add before that there's more than one Carol on our call. It's Carol Brumer-Glicksman.
Thank you.
Who is available for the chat.
Thank you very much, Tracy. I want to also welcome you to our gathering tonight. It takes a lot of courage to come on to a call with people that you may not know or may not have much to connect with until now. It's a terrible time, a troubling time, a deeply difficult time for all of us. I'd like to share a couple of thoughts that are Torah thoughts, and from them, perhaps we can derive a little bit of comfort. There is a narrative in the Torah. It's actually Leviticus chapter 10, if you want to look it up yourselves. The Torah portion is Shmini, if that's important to you. And the narrative takes place at a moment of celebration. It's a national communal celebration where the Jewish people in the desert dedicated their first major project after being liberated from slavery and finding independence. It was the dedication of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, that served them in the desert. And in the midst of these festivities, at which Aaron, the high priest, Moses' brother, was officiating, in the midst of all this, Aaron's two sons, Nadav and Avihu, were struck down. How they were struck down is not, we don't have the time to deal with that tonight, although I will say this much, that it was considered an act of God. That's both a theological and a scriptural description, as well as the insurance companies would decide it the same way. It's an act of God, and in that sense, it's different than what we've experienced here in Highland Park, which was very much not an act of God. It was an act of a person. Nevertheless, the theme of loss, sudden loss, is very much a part of this narrative. And in the middle of this narrative, we find some of the responses. Moses offers a statement, which may not be the most comforting statement. I'm going to read it to you in English. I just have my book here, and I'm still trying to face the mic as I do this. Moses notes to the people, and he says, the Krovaya Kadesh, in English, I will be sanctified. He's speaking for God here. I will be sanctified through those who are nearest to me. I will be honored before the entire people. So we have this idea of Avihu being closest to God, and the Talmud maintains this. They were beloved by God. And there's a community here as well. Whether these are made to be words of comfort or not is unclear, and it's not clear Aaron is comforted by them. In fact, Aaron has a reaction, and I want to focus on this in the few minutes that I have. Aaron reacts, Vayidom Aharon, which means that Aaron was silent. Two ways to interpret this with two messages for us. One is the attempt to accept the loss that he sustained. And that's how some of the classical commentaries interpret it. And that's one approach for us to begin to accept. But there's another approach that the Kotzker Rebbe, the great Hasidic 19th century commentator, suggest, noting that the word for silence in Hebrew here is duma, different than some of the other words we know for silence in Hebrew. There's several of them. Duma is related to the word dam, blood. The Kotzker calls it a blutiger demoma in Yiddish, a bloody silence. Aaron may have been quiet, but he was not quiescent. He was not passive, according to this approach. He was angry, sad, raging, perhaps, underneath the silence. Moses then continues and notes that the entire people should mourn the loss that we have had. So there's a community aspect to this as well. And then I skip to the end of the narrative as I conclude here. In verse 19, Aaron finally finds his voice, actually. His silence is over, where Moses questions him on a very mundane question, a very, very petty question from the perspective of loss and grief. Why didn't you eat the sacrifices that were part of the service there? And Aaron finally finds his voice. And I need to read this to you because it's just amazing how Aaron responds to his brother. he says, this day, these offerings were brought before God, and now that these things, such things have happened to me, if I was to eat this day's offering, would God approve? Saying, you really think that's what God wants? You really think that's what God wants me to do? And Moses, of course, accepts that. I think there are messages of comfort and messages of guidance here. And this is not just homiletic drush. According to the many major commentaries, this narrative is actually the basis for the entire structure of Jewish grief and mourning. This is where it starts, the first day after death, and the entire rabbinic structure of Shiva and Shloshim and 11, 12 months. It's all built on here. So this is not just a nice, interesting or tragic story. It actually gives us guidance. And part of that guidance is as follows. There's no script for this. There's no one way to grieve. Some of us may be grieving quietly and trying to accept the loss that we have. Some of us may be quiet and yet we're angry. And it's okay to be angry, to be raging. There's a lot to be angry about here. It's okay to be angry. Sometimes we have to find our voice and speak up. And it's a question of us knowing when is it time to be quiet, when is it time to speak up, and there's not a right or wrong answer to that question. But the bottom line is, as what we're doing tonight, as what our ancestors did, as the people did in the desert, we do this together. We do this as a group. We find healing, we find strength, we find comfort, and the ability to go on when we share the feelings with each other. And that is why we are here tonight.
Thank you, Rabbi Joe, for those words and that guidance, and that permission to be sad and angry and silent and raging and all of those feelings that many people have, whether they have experienced a personal loss of a person or a loss of their understanding of the world. So we now turn to Genevieve Hine, who is going to talk to us a little bit more about trauma so that some of what people are experiencing makes a little bit more sense.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and I'm glad to be here, although disheartening in the wake of recent experiences and circumstances. And I'm here to talk a little bit more about just some soft education around trauma, as well as helping to create a more general understanding about the impacts of trauma and our body's physiological response to trauma situations. I believe most people participating probably have a generalized awareness of our body's flight or fight response to situations. We have a natural instinct in our bodies to keep ourselves alive. We see a bear in the woods and we decide, are we going to fight the bear? Or are we going to run away from the bear? And in this process, our bodies experience a tremendous jolt of hormones triggering through our bodies, cortisol and adrenaline, that really makes our bodies physiologically and physically respond at a heightened level. So we can run faster, we have a heightened heart rate, we might get sweaty palms, and we're really in a state of hypervigilance and just responding to survive in the circumstances. And when our bodies receive these heightened levels of cortisol and adrenaline, it takes a long time for the body to metabolize that. And it takes a while and time and soft experiences to help our bodies return to a sense of calm and self-regulation. And I'm going to talk more about self-regulation later because I think it's a big piece of what we can really focus on right now in these moments. So in this process, our bodies are exposed to a trigger, and our body, their brain, calculates an unsafe circumstance or situation. And our internal safety system or survival system kicks in and takes over. And what happens in this process is certain parts of our brains actually shut down. Parts of our brains that control executive functioning and thinking and sophisticated language, those all kind of receive less energy because the rest of the body is taking our system into saying, we need to survive this horrible circumstance that we're experiencing. And our energy is redirected into this really heightened survival mode. And our bodies have developed this process through evolution and through time, and it makes us like these remarkable human beings that we've developed these natural processes to survive through circumstances. In the psychological world, we consider these really strong experiences of either being witnessing or having this internal threat to our safety, well-being, or life as trauma with a capital T, a really big experience that we have been a part of, or exposed to. And in these circumstances, individuals may experience heightened symptoms of stress for days. And sometimes it takes a while for those symptoms to wane. And in some experiences, it takes a lot longer for some individuals. Some of these symptoms of acute stress response may be hypervigilance to situations or quick responses, problems concentrating, being easily distracted, or changes in just our daily living activities, which may include eating, sleeping, taking care of ourselves, right? The good news is that we are adaptive and resilient creatures, and we've developed those skills over time as well. And our research through trauma shows us that about 85% of individuals will recover in a natural space and time after being exposed to such a strong circumstance. And there are some individuals that may experience some of these symptoms for prolonged time, and it may manifest itself into something that needs treatment or more attention to help an individual feel safe and healthy in their own body. When I was asked to talk this evening, I have to say I really struggled with kind of like where the main points, what would be really helpful, because we could talk for hours about our body's complex ability to respond and navigate its way and to traumatic situations. But really, with the amount of time and really the nature of the circumstances that we've experienced as a community, I really wanted to focus on what is important to share right now with what we know about trauma. As a community, we've experienced a tremendous grief, collective loss, trauma, and now is the time to really recognize our human needs and realities, to focus our efforts and our time and compassion, nurturing, and healthy expression, and to really aid our bodies in developing self-regulation. And when we talk about self-regulation, it sometimes is a term that has some misconceptions. It's not about finding this blissful joy or really diving into a sense of happiness that has no ends, but it's about having a sense of awareness, a sense of safety, and connectedness to both ourselves, surroundings, and others. We all have moments when we can feel like something is just a little agitated. I can't quite control my circumstances, or I have a heightened sense of when something this bad or something happens around me. And that could be a flag to us that's saying, hey, something's not right in my internal systems, and that I'm interpreting things in the world around me in an unsafe space. Our bodies and our brains have recently had a really sharp experience. Geographically, where we were, we heard news, we've heard stories, and we have consistent exposure to the recent events that happened over the past couple of days. And it may be really frustrating or hard, complicated, or even sad to have to verbally process thoughts and feelings. And that experience is closely related to what I talked about earlier, in that when we have these trauma responses, those parts of our brains that are in charge of all that sophisticated thinking aren't available to us at that time. So nonverbal forms of expression and communication, these may be more welcoming and accessible for us right now, for our family members. And when people ask me often, like, well, how can I help someone get calm? I just need them to calm down when they're upset or dysregulated, or may have been triggered by a memory or some connection with recent events. And I really encourage offering a sensory form of engagement. And when I say that, I talk about the nonverbal opportunities to connect and communicate and to feel the world and smell the world and really understand your surroundings in a way that doesn't force you to have to use words. By doing this, we can naturally bring ourselves down to a different sense of safety and feel more calm in communicating, even if we're not using those words. The other piece that we can do to really offer support to someone, even though it seems like it's in inaction, is to model self-regulated behavior. We have these wonderful things in our systems called mirror neurons that when we see somebody or witness somebody, whether it's making a small facial expression or a behavior of some sort, that our bodies naturally mimic it, and that we can connect with them in a way that helps our neurological systems automatically picking up on what they're sharing and communicating, and that we may do the same. So if you're thinking about, if you're sitting across from someone having a cup of coffee, or you see someone, you know, across the way and they smile or wince and you may smile or wince back, that's your body's instinctual way of connecting with someone in a different way. And we can do this through self-regulation as well. And that inactivity that we feel like it's not like a real strong intervention to help someone calm down is really a strong tool to just naturally help somebody without saying, we need to sit down and have a conversation. Sometimes it's easier to sit next to someone and model and practice good self-control and calmness yourself. So if I had to like identify the top 3 things that could be helpful to somebody right now, and how you could be purposeful in your engagements to help them heal through this experience, would be to be present and available for conversations. A lot of times we think that we're there, but active listening and not just hearing someone is a different skill. Putting your cell phone down, taking the time to offer eye contact, sitting close to someone and really recognizing you have my attention and I'm listening. And maybe that person's not even saying anything. The other, number 2, I'd say would be to be aware of your own responses and what you're focused on. If you naturally see that, like, I'm having a hard time getting out of the house, I can't seem to get this together, and X, Y, and Z is bothering me, that's probably influencing someone else as well. If you're connected to your social media and just recognizing that you are taking in all the details that our media is sharing with us about this horrible, tragic event, others are exposed to your experiences with that as well. So a stronger sense of self-awareness as you kind of interact with other individuals who may be having a hard time is a really powerful tool in kind of helping people together heal through an experience. And the last one, I can't stress enough, and I'm so glad that so much of our time together this evening is in a non-traditional way of connecting with individuals, and that's engaging in nonverbal nurturing acts. Practicing art together, taking a walk, experiencing music that you might not listen to, or using the music that you know makes you feel good, or just sharing an activity with somebody in a safe space where you feel like, I have the opportunity to be more connected right now. So those would be the 3 points that I'd say, like, if these are the only things that you can focus on right now, take those with you. We're going to have to navigate a lot of hard conversations that are rooted in or about fear right now. Be conscious that you're not avoiding them. It's important right now to put words to what happened, to be present, to gently encourage or redirect misinformation or misconceptions, and really take note of the opportunities to reaffirm safety, to identify safe spaces, safe people, safe environments. And for so many of the caregivers out there, whether you're in the capacity of being a teacher, a nurse, a parent, we're in a tough space right now because we're not only having to respond to the needs, but we're also experiencing it, right? We're human beings. And we feel a little helpless right now. We feel like maybe less confident because we too also were kind of in a space of, oh my gosh, something really terrible happened. Don't forget your years of knowledge and skills. Before Monday happened, we were competent parents and confident caregivers, and reflect back on the opportunities you have when you did provide safety, encouragement, and recognition for everything that everyone's doing. And you do have skills and capacity to get through this. A lot of trauma work and healing, working with trauma therapists, is really noting this space of capacity for an individual to overcome strong things, powerful things, things that were hard, and to remember all the positive things that happened before and after. We are not defined by one moment. A close colleague of mine is referencing right now quite a bit about the concept of negativity bias that's researched in trauma, and that it really takes one major in a situation and we have a strong imprint in our brain that says this is not safe. And that is a very strong kind of like hard thing for us to move away from, and we remember it so quickly. And that's what through evolution makes us really remarkable creatures. And it takes a lot more positive subsequent experiences for us to feel better. So to take advantage of the opportunities to really reflect on our capacity of the spaces where we did do really well, or that we did have a great time participating in a community event. I also want to recognize that we really can't help others if we don't help ourselves. So taking moments to okay with where I'm at, and knowing that if you are not there in a full capacity and you have a sense of well-being, it's really hard to foster that in someone else. And for the last point is just as caregivers, we're naturally monitoring and observing what others are doing and saying. And right now we do want to monitor and observe some acute stress symptoms that we may be witnessing in our homes or in our communities. We want to take a look at the frequency, the duration, or the severity of some of these things. Is it waning? Is it getting worse? Is this something I should be concerned about? And don't feel afraid to reach out and ask somebody, are these things I should be concerned about? And finally, I think that, we're all needing help right now. And there is no shame in asking for help or telling someone you need help, and really recognizing your own experiences as we're all going through this together. So I know that is a brief and incomplete definition of trauma, but I wanted to put some context to what we're going through as our bodies have really powerful physiological responses to situations and circumstances. It's connected to the mind and the brain, and it certainly influences our experiences every day. So thank you, and I look forward to everyone else sharing their experiences too.
Thank you, Genevieve. I feel like I have a much better understanding of really, I think what I picked up most was the time, that the reaction to the trauma doesn't necessarily go away in a day or 2 days, that it can take time, and the importance of lots of nonverbal. I think the phrase that you used that caught my ear was soft experiences to sort of find re-regulation. So now I'm very pleased to turn over the screen to Angelica and Lulu from Pittsburgh. I got to know them just a little bit yesterday. And as I said, they're ahead of us on the journey, and they've already been really helpful to those of us in the professional community. And I'm happy to share their experiences with those in the lay community as well. So welcome.
Thank you so much. I hope my internet stays stable. It's nice to be here. Nice is not the accurate word, but it's an honor to be here, and thank you for having us. So I'll introduce myself first, and I will be passing it to Lulu at some point to talk a little bit about what she does and her experiences as well. My name is Angelica. I am an art therapist, and I specialize in trauma. I have my training and background has been in trauma, specifically from violence and crime. And I actually have a really deep connection and personal connection to the Jewish community here in Pittsburgh. I've worked in the Jewish community for over 20 years, first as a nanny, then, teens and adults with special needs. And then I came on board in 2006 to JFCS, working in their foster care and adoption department before then leaving at some point about 4 years later to go to grad school to become an art therapist. And I spent about 6.5 years or so at an agency that focused on serving victims of violence and crime of all types. And while I was there, the synagogue shooting occurred on October 27, 2018. And I do want to say, you know, to any of you here who are feeling a sense of bewilderment, certainly a sense of compromised safety, you know, that this could happen to you at a, you know, at a time that was meant to be joyful and celebratory. You know, just know that we do understand, you know, coming from Squirrel Hill, we literally hail from Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, and that safety was deeply compromised for so many people throughout the community. And I was one of those people. The day that I found out about the shooting, I was utterly devastated, inconsolable. I actually had to attend a wedding that evening, and it was not a joyful experience for me. But I was also in a position, a very unique position, where I was able to take a certain kind of action. I was part of the very early response team, crisis response team for the community, and I was able to step in that following Monday and, you know, be a part of serving our community right away. A very short time later, JFCS, where I was no longer working, opened up a position that was created specifically for a therapist to serve those who were impacted by the shooting. And I had the great honor of being hired for that position. And I've been with the agency again ever since. So this affected me on a very personal level, and certainly professionally. I've had, again, the great honor of being able to serve anyone who was impacted in any way. Those who were, some of whom were closest, you know, family members to those who were killed, as well as anyone on the outskirts of that as well in the wider community. And it has been a very humbling and rewarding experience. And we're about 3.5 years in, almost 4. So as you can imagine, there have been a lot of changes in our experience over time, some of which have been impacted by COVID, but you can imagine, as you know, we've all been living through that as well. But so what I've observed in those early days, many have already spoken to it. Rabbi Joe, you know, spoke really just, you know, hit home when you spoke about Aaron and, you know, that experience of all of those feelings that, you know, that many people expressed, feeling sense of rage, a sense of fear, deep fear, so much sadness and grief and mourning, and all of that I can't validate enough. Those are incredibly common and normal experiences that many people have, and they can range much further than that. Numbness is something that a lot of people can experience as well. You know, that cutting off, that protective part of the self to keep those feelings at bay. A lot of people also felt like they were in a fog, compromised issues with, you know, concentration, focus, memory, all of that, again, very common. And Genevieve, you spoke so well to all of that in your experience with a background in trauma as well. So I know that, as you said, it was a sort of brief summary and incomplete, but you spoke so well to what many people experience, and gave very good reason as to what's happening in the brain and the body, and how it takes a long time sometimes for us to be able to move through a lot of that. I know this was already spoken to as well, but I have found in my work with many, many survivors of trauma of many different varieties that the key element really is about safety and support in relationships. And that can look like a lot of different things, right? We can be talking about our safest and closest confidants, our partners, our parents, our children, even sometimes, right? You know, friends and others, but we can also look to ways of finding support in community, in smaller groups, like this one, and hopefully there will be others out there for you all to be able to access in the days, weeks, months, and years to come. It's unfortunate that it's needed, but it is, in my experience, very, very needed. And so this is a moment that I actually want to pull Lulu in, my very dear, dear friend and colleague who I adore in her work at the agency and with the survivors and witnesses that she works very closely with. You're muted, Lulu.
Of course, that is so typical of me. Thank you, Angelica. And I really feel like what I'm going to say, everybody else has already said in many ways, but I guess the more times you hear it, the more true it will feel to you. I have the true honor and privilege of working with the survivors and witnesses and family members of that dreadful day here in Pittsburgh, as Angelica said, almost 4 years ago. And I have learned so much from them individually, but also as a group, because we come together often, but at least monthly, we, because of COVID, have done this over Zoom for 2.5 years. And I know that Genevieve said how important nonverbal communication is, and I 100% agree with that. But as Rabbi Joe said, everybody grieves differently and needs different things at different times. And I have witnessed the amazing raw emotion and sensitive bonding that has happened in this group that I facilitate. And I don't know how much you all are aware of the shooting in Pittsburgh, but it was 3 different synagogues that were in the same building. So these people did not necessarily know each other. So they have come together because of this common experience that none of them ever in their wildest nightmares thought that they would experience. And obviously as individuals, they all experience it differently, but it was the same event. And so I've been facilitating this group for 3 years, and maybe, I don't know how long into it, they were all talking, and you know, very often there are tears and sometimes there's anger, but I can't tell you how much laughter there is in that room as well, which is just lovely. But one of the gentlemen attendees said one night, I just need to acknowledge that I never thought I would feel that there was a silver lining to this event. But the people in this room that I have become so close to are the silver lining to this. And it's because they're able to share very intimate thoughts, details, fears that no other people on earth can understand, because they all experienced this horrific trauma, tragedy together. And it's so important that you find your safe person or your safe people. So if you do need to talk, if you do need to scream, cry, whatever, you're doing it without any fear that this person is either going to go and talk to the media or whatever it might be, because that happens. but it's just the importance of that safety, but also that support and that group support of finding a silver lining. I truly believe that even though it's only day 3 for you all, there are going to be some silver linings ahead. And I wish you all truly the best.
And I do the same. Thank you, Lulu. The only thing I was going to add after Lulu shared, and I, you speaking to the experiences of the witnesses and survivors that you work with is just so incredibly powerful to me. And, I hope in some ways helpful to others. Genevieve also already hit home talking about other things that she has found in her work that is helpful for folks in terms of providing things that can lend to self-regulation, things that are nonverbal. As an art therapist, and Lulu knows this very well, that I, and a trauma specialist, often promote nonverbal processing when folks are open to that, both in session and certainly encourage that outside of session as well. These are ways of taking some action for ourselves, and I kind of want to talk about that just for another moment. This idea that so many of my clients have expressed this feeling of wanting to act, wanting to take some form of action, either whether it's for themselves or because it's the Jewish community, they so often they just want to help and to give back. And so that has become a really powerful thing to highlight in the work that we do. And when I talk about ideas of taking action, we can think about this as, when folks bring flowers to a site, as they did in our situation and still do, it's something that people feel like they can do. And it also provides, sorry about the background noise, it also provides, the body with movement. You move through, right, this experience. You, even the act, again, of something as simple as taking flowers can provide something for a person who is in the throes of a traumatic response or grief or loss. And Lulu and I were talking about this earlier, and she even said, lighting candles inside your own home, right, is a way of taking action, and sometimes we can, also incorporate prayer into that if that feels right for you. But in terms of, being able to take action and provide yourself with your own self-regulatory tools, always promoting things like writing, journaling, art making, using fidgets and putty are things that, just kind of keeping the body moving to help to release some of what ends up feeling pent up in us, right? So even thinking about just even the smallest movements, and I would even argue that the simpler, the better, because as Genevieve reminded us, the higher functioning capacities of the brain are really offline to us to a large degree anyway in these moments. So giving yourselves opportunities, to kind of work through it and move through it in this deceptively simple ways is, really something that I would encourage each of you to explore for yourselves. What are those things? And they can be as, as releasing as exercise does for us or dancing can do for us, but they can be also as simple as things like squeezing something in your hand, holding a stone, or squeezing a stress ball, right? I mean, doodling on a piece of paper. What was I saying to you earlier? I say this to all of my clients. If you can move, you can draw. And as an art therapist, I do encourage that, of course, to a large degree. So even if you find yourself in this moment scribbling without intention on a piece of paper, know that you are trying to help your body to self-regulate. Your cortisol levels are starting to drop just enough so that your thinking brain can come back online. Okay, so think the simpler the better for those reasons. And I know that we are right at our time, and I do want to, be so mindful of that, but I just want to thank everyone for having both Lulu and myself here to speak about our experiences in this brief way. And we've already, thanked you all from JCFS over in Highland Park in Illinois, but please know that we are we're continuing to be a resource for you for as long as you may need. You can reach out to us at any time. And for all of you, I will share my little trademark saying that I say to all of my clients, which is be gentle with yourselves. Please, at this time especially, please be gentle. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Angelica and Lulu. That was beautiful and heartfelt, and felt as if, I don't know, Pittsburgh was giving Highland Park a hug or something like that. I think the instructions to be gentle, to move our bodies, to find little things, not necessarily grand gestures, are really sort of great takeaways for all of us. So I'm now going to turn it over to my colleague, Beth Fishman, who is going to lead us in a self-compassion meditation.
Thank you, Tracy. And thank you, Angelica, for giving me such a perfect lead in, because, it makes sense that we would all be asking ourselves and asking each other how we can endure this terrible, tragic moment. And it's come on so suddenly and so unexpectedly. Our hearts are breaking for the people who lost their lives and for the folks who were injured, for everyone who was there and are now, we're witnessing the shooting, where our hearts are breaking for our whole community. And I honestly feel like every one of us living in this country right now at such a violent time, our hearts are breaking for ourselves and for each other, because it's just so frightening and it's so exhausting. So we ask, how do we keep going? How do we support ourselves, and how do we keep moving forward? So self-compassion is a gift that we can give ourselves to keep ourselves moving forward. Dr. Kristen Neff is well known as an expert in self-compassion, and she's created a very simple practice that's based on 4 phrases that reflect the different components of self-compassion. The first component is mindfulness. The second is our shared common humanity. And the third is self-kindness. So we can use these phrases to remind ourselves of mindfulness and our common humanity and self-kindness whenever we feel like we need some help and some support to get through this really profoundly troubling and challenging time. So I'm going to lead us through the practice. It's very short. It's only about 5 minutes. It's very easy to learn. It's simple. And after I guide you through it, I'll be sure to share those phrases with you so that you can have them with you whenever you may need them in the future. So to begin the practice, when you're ready, settle down into your body. Feel your body sitting in the chair. If you're laying down on a bed or a sofa, just feel and ground yourself in your body. And as you're doing that, begin to notice your breathing. We're not going to change or alter or control our breathing in any way, but just be aware of the natural rhythm of your own breath as it goes in and out of your nostrils or at your belly. And as you're observing your breathing, allow your eyes to gently close if you're comfortable doing that, or you can turn your gaze softly onto the floor a few feet in front of you. The first phrase then that we say to ourselves is that this is a moment of suffering. This is a moment of suffering. And in saying this, we're simply bringing a gentle, mindful awareness to the fact that suffering is present, that this is a hard time. I invite you to find some language that feels natural to you. Maybe saying, this is a moment of suffering does feel natural to you. But if not, it could be something like, this is really hard right now. Or I'm really struggling. By saying these, we're turning toward the pain. We're turning toward the difficulty. We're acknowledging it without any judgment for ourselves. And we're naming it so that it can soften. Because this is a moment of suffering. Next, we acknowledge our shared experience by saying to ourselves, suffering is a part of our shared humanity. And now we're reminding ourselves that we are absolutely not alone, that unfortunately, hard times are a part of life. And we are among, well, we're among the sea of humanity that has had hard times in the past. And in particular, right here, right now in this community, we are enduring this tragic time, but we're enduring it together. So we say to ourselves, suffering is a part of our shared humanity. And as before, use language that feels natural for you. So it could be something like, it's normal to feel this way under these circumstances, or it's okay to be struggling right now. Many people are struggling right now. Or we're all going through this hard time together. Suffering is a normal part of our shared humanity. And then lastly, we show ourselves kindness. And we do that with these final phrases to hold in our minds and to say to ourselves, may I be kind to myself in this moment. May I give myself the compassion that I need. May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I give myself the compassion that I need. And to support bringing kindness to yourself, you can hold your hands over your heart or be in touch with another part of your body that feels comforting and soothing for you. And you can imagine and let feelings of caring and love and support flow through your fingers into your body. May I be kind to myself. May I give myself the compassion I need. And as before, use any language that supports you in this sense of kindness. It could be something that you might say to someone else here on this call or in our community as we're all going through this difficult time together, like, I'm here for you, meaning yourself, but still, I'm here for you. I care about you. Or something that we might say to a loved one or to a child, something like, oh, hon, I'm so, so sorry. Because we are. Anything that feels natural to you to express your deep wish to be and feel supported. May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I give myself the compassion that I need. And that's the whole practice. So to come out of the practice, again, notice your body. Notice how your body feels right now, and allow any sensations that you do notice to be just as they are, no judgment. And allow yourself to be just as you are and feel just as you feel in this moment right now, accepting, no judgment. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and return to our common space here together. And I thank you. Thank you for doing this practice with me. I hope it serves you moving forward. And I'll put the phrases in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth, so much. It feels like you took us to that soft space that Jeanette referenced. And while we were using words, it felt like the sound of your voice had a softness to it that was almost tangible. So I hope that that brought comfort to people. Finally, we are going to close our formal program with the Mishabera, which is the traditional Jewish prayer of healing. And we invite back Cantor David Berger to lead us in that. Pretty sure we're doing
Hi,
the
everyone.
Friedman version.
What an honor to be with everyone tonight. And it's sometimes we're used to hearing Misha Berach in synagogue. We think, oh, that's only for people who have had a terrible surgery or who are suffering from some awful disease, and we distance ourselves as if we are not just as much in need of healing. And I think one of the most powerful things um, that Debbie Friedman did when she put together this piece and when she went around the country leading people in healing is helping everyone to recognize that we are all deeply in need of healing. We're all hurt. Pain and suffering are a part of human life, as we just learned. And so we all need to find our space of healing in this moment and in other times. And right now, in a moment of such acute feeling of violation, it's a moment where we can come together and try our best to heal each other, which I think is really what is at the core of this song and of this practice and of this evening together. So I'm going to share the words of Misha Berach, and I'll all of a sudden get a little bit small on your screen. But if you spotlight me, then everyone will see all the words.
They're backward, David.
Oh, they're backwards? I can fix that. Okay.
I thought you could.
Hold on. It's funny, for
There
me,
we
they
go.
look right the way. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength who bless the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Oops, I think that's a rush. Should we say the wrong way? Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say
you, Cantor David.
Thank you.
So we are coming to the end of our formal program, and in a minute or two, you're going to see a pop-up message on your screen inviting you to join a breakout room. If you wish, please join the breakout room. And if you would rather not do that, that is also fine. I want to offer my deepest thanks to our presenters, Cantor David Berger, Rabbi Joe Zarowski, Dr. Genevieve Heim, Angelica Miskanin, and Lulu Orr, and Dr. Beth Fishman. You have created, I think, a space of safety and hopefully comfort that all of us can take advantage of and enjoy and so desperately need. So I wish all of you the renewal of spirit and the renewal of body that Debbie Friedman wrote about in that Misha Berach, and hope that you find ways to take care of yourselves as you move along your journey, and to know that JCFS staff are here to walk alongside of you. We know that on the PowerPoint slide next to me, it is talking about the fact that at JFCS, we have a warm line that you can call. We are offering drop-in support at the Wenger JCC. I'm not sure what else the slide says, but those are the two of the best ways. And of course, you can always contact us through our access line. And there's a wonderful page of resources on the Highland Park City website with lots and lots of additional resources offered throughout the community. And I wish each one of you a peaceful night.
Thank you so much.